This is Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA, and tonight I'm going over UFC Fight Night, Vera versus Sandhagen, taking place in San Antonio, Texas, 13 total bouts, and I am glad that this particular main event got its own crowd because it was supposed to be in the Apex, but when looking at the actual card itself, I'm like, I can see why originally it was at the Apex. Co-main event is Holm versus Yana Kunitskaya, or Yana Santos now. And if we're being honest, I'm not too interested in the entire card itself. I might just probably catch the main event and possibly what I think is going to be the banger of the night, which is the no-brainer fight of the night, Landwehr versus Lingo. But let's get started with the card. I'm not going to spend too much of my intellect on these particular fights because honestly, fights like this one, bantamweight Timaris Vidal versus Haley Cowan, doesn't really deserve my kind of attention. Like, ridiculous enough, Vidal is minus 230. I don't see how that's humanly possible for her to be that high of a favorite. Like, I am running a bit high when it comes to betting women's MMA, especially dogs, like Veronica Hardy, which was like, it got me so happy. I was so happy. I was so happy cashing that bet, mainly because like I was right. I was like, huh, that's what it feels like to get a prediction right. That's awesome. When it comes to this fight, like neither girl really is extraordinary. Haley Cowan, I gave her a lot of crap for her, I guess, the previous breakdown with her and Eileen Perez, the girl with the big booty. I was going to pick the big booty girl in this particular matchup. It's a completely different matchup. It's minus 230 for Vidal. Comeback on Cowan is plus 190. The plus 190 on Cowan is appealing to me, just as appealing as she is because she's pretty darn hot. And all hail Haley Cowan. What I like about her is that she is getting particularly better overall. She's primarily a striker. I called her like an athletic kick sock. What do you call it? A soccer mom kickboxer, like a cardio kickboxer kind of girl. But she's gradually getting better at what she does. She's maintained a type of fighting style that I think is going to help her in this particular matchup against Vidal. What I mean by that is that she's fought a lot of women that like to pressure her against the cage because she's the striker. Good kicks, I'll give her that. Like she's definitely setting up her kicks better, and because she's been in fights quite often recently where she's been kind of pushed up against the cage, I think Vidal's going to rely on that to win this fight, which I think is going to fall right into the plans of Haley Cowan. Vidal, the only real way I see her winning this fight is if she definitely hurts Cowan on the feet, which she definitely has the ability to do so. She got a pretty nasty flying knee to the chest knockout against Ramona Pascal, the Ramona Pascal, one of the toughest girls in the division. I'm surprised they cut her because she's so tough. Yes, I'm surprised just as much as you are. But Timaris Vidal, nothing really special. Going back and watching tape on her, she does like to push girls against the cage. Likes to get her own takedowns. Like, surprisingly enough, the best fight I've seen of her is in her UFC debut where she destroyed that. I was going to call her the C word, but I'm trying not to curse anymore in these videos. But that bum of Pasquale, the minus 230 does not warrant in this situation. I'm going to go with Haley Cowan, kind of a spiteful pick, but I think she definitely has a good chance at minus or plus almost 200. I think she's got a good shot. Don't really care though. This bout, though, very interesting. Vinicius Salvador versus Victor Altamirano, and near even currently minus 115 for Salvador. Come back on Victor Altamirano is minus 105. I'm not interested in playing this one at all because I do think there's a possibility this could be a lot closer than it should be. I think Vinicius Salvador, in my opinion at least, has the better striking. I don't think that's anything crazy to say just because he actually throws solid combinations and he's got power in his punches. I thought he would have been the taller guy. He's listed 5'7" compared to the 5'8" of Altamirano. I get a feeling he will be the taller guy in the cage, like will be noticeable, just because I've seen Altamirano and I've seen him against some shorter guys, and he looked pretty short himself. Altamirano, he's a tough dude himself. What's funny about this matchup is that Vinicius Salvador was supposed to fight the guy that Altamirano beat last, which is, I have to check his name, Daniel da Silva Miojo, your ramen noodle boy. And I saw some things in that matchup that I liked from El Magnifico Altamirano, which is his toughness, his general fight IQ, because, well, actually, to be honest, his kind of lack of fight IQ, because although he got the finish in the first round, he didn't necessarily push the pace with the grappling as much as I wanted him to in that fight. He ended up actually hurting Daniel Da Silva with a body shot, which dropped him, and then that's what led him to beat the crap out of him. I think if this stays on the feet, which I'm assuming it will, it might play a little closer with Vinicius Salvador being the better, cleaner striker. What I don't like about Salvador is actually watching tape on him outside of any UFC broadcasting. He kind of plays silly games in there that makes me a bit worrisome about, like, hey, betting him against a guy that I know is tough in Altamirano, and I know his skill set. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Although I don't necessarily think he's the best in that division, I don't think he'll ever crack any top 15 or hell, even top 20. I do think he's good enough, and it's a good enough matchup for Salvador. I don't necessarily think Salvador is going to knock him out clean. If people are predicting that, I just don't see that truly happening against a guy the level of Altamirano. Again, he's a solid guy. I think he can push the pace and get some takedowns, but overall, I think Vinicius Salvador is going to have the better outcome. And one thing that was brought to my attention that for whatever reason I didn't really pay attention to was the judging in Texas. Texas judges are a little funky. I don't know why. I really don't know why. It just is what it is. I was live in an event where I saw 230-27s the opposite way in Texas, and I was like, okay. So this whole card, I'm not interested in betting, especially these closer fights like this. I'm going to go with Vinicius Salvador, but there's an inkling in me, like a tickle in my taint that says that Altamirano might get that quote-unquote hometown, we're close enough to Mexico decision. But I'm going to go with Salvador by a decision. Next bout, we've got Manuel Torres versus Trey Ogden. And -200 for El Loco Manuel Torres, and come back on Trey Ghost Samurai Ogden is +135. When looking at this tape and trying to see what the reads are on Manuel Lopez, I'm like, hey, is there a way he can get taken down and controlled? Trey Ogden, I don't think is that guy. Trey Ogden's a little funky. He's kind of he's solid. He's definitely solid, but I think there's very clear-cut ways to beat him, and that is to push the pressure on him, defend takedowns, and choke him out, because he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu that has been choked out many times. And funny enough, Manuel Torres is decent enough at the submission game. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, if I remember correctly, and on top of that, he trains out of Antrim Gym. I like what he does in there. I like his style. It's just, to me, it is kind of a lower level style. I haven't really seen him progress himself to be a UFC level caliber fighter. Not to say he can't win this fight or that he can't win fights in the UFC, because he has a very particular entertaining Mexican style that is like balls to the walls. The guy throws everything into his punches, and I mean absolutely everything. The guy is incredibly fun to watch. I think his pressure and his style, just the way he throws his kicks, the way he throws his punches, he almost fights with a level of confidence that he's like, I'm not going to get beat, which is crazy because he's been beaten twice. I think he can definitely push that pace on Trey Ogden, and funny enough, I do think he can actually get a submission on Trey. Trey's been guillotined a lot of times by really low-level competition. Oh, what was his name? Something Gifford submitted him twice with the guillotine. What was his name? Thomas Gifford. If you don't know who Thomas Gifford is, and you are wanting to be an aspiring judge, or you want to get an idea of what judging is like, go look up Thomas Gifford against, what was his name? I know his name, Mike Davis. And you tell me how you score those rounds, because they are not 10-9s. But yeah, this guy didn't belong to the UFC, and he got choked out. He choked out Trey Ogden twice, which I thought was kind of crazy. So I'm going to go with Torres by a submission, mainly because I think the punches that he throws, they're not incredibly devastating. Like, I mean, he came into the UFC and he knocked out Frank Camacho with a beautiful hook, but that's Frank Camacho. I think Trey Ogden's chin's a little bit better than that. I do think that punch, or the punches, will kind of make Trey Ogden shoot kind of wild, which he did against Zell Huber. Mostly, although I don't like the -200 on Manuel Torres, I do think he is bringing the reckoning that Zell Huber should have brought to Trey Ogden, but for whatever reason, Zell Huber just kind of punked out, laid an egg. I think Manuel Torres is going to give that all to Trey Ogden, kind of like revenge on the gringo. So I'll go with Torres by a second-round submission. Next bout, we've got flyweight, one of my favorite fighters ever, Daniel Da Silva Miojo, versus CJ Vergara. And I love Daniel De Silva. I absolutely love this kid. He is straight money. He is fantastic to watch. He is an under-casher's dream. Be the Undertaker and take Daniel De Silva under here. I'm going to go with CJ Vergara. And the main reason CJ Vergara, because as much as I love Daniel De Silva, and I mean, I love the kid, and I'm being very sincere here. I do think he's got a lot of potential. It's just that for the love of God, he doesn't seem to have that type of fighting spirit or really the ability to come back from adversity. I think he definitely, I hate to say it, quits in the cage. And although we've seen a certain fighter have that same type of mentality and come back, I don't know if this is the right matchup for Daniel De Silva to come back and show that he's got that Charles Oliveira-esque quality in here. CJ Vergara, I know he can come back from adversity. I know he's willing to do whatever it takes. He is himself from San Antonio, Texas. If for whatever reason he gets rocked in the first round, I think he can come back and still win a very close decision if it comes to that. But I do think he's going to finish the kid in the first round. He is a minus 290 favorite, and come back on De Silva as a plus 220. As much as I would love to say that there's value on the plus 220, and granted, I think there might be just a very slight chance that Daniel Silva comes out here because he is incredibly dynamic. He's very explosive. He hits hard. He can get submissions. It's just that, again, if you hurt him, I don't think he can come back. I mean, he lost to a certain character that on the internet recently, on Twitter, has been making waves for his ability to slob a knob. So I'll just say that. CJ Vergara, as I mentioned, he's tough. What I didn't like about Miyojo's last fight is that he got dropped by a body shot and he just went straight down, like immediately down. Like it's almost like he does that move that Charles Oliveira does when he gets hurt and he hits to the ground, but he did it at the worst possible time. And I think CJ, because he has an actual knockout similar to that, or by gum identical, where he did it to Bruno Correa in the Contender Series, hit him with the knee to the body, I know CJ is going to want to spam the crap out of that. And I think he's got the better chin. He's going to have the better output. I think he's going to have just the better overall game plan, which is crack the boy in the mouth and he'll go down, which I predict happening in the first round. So I'll go with Vergara, first round knockout. More than likely, I'll probably take the under or Vergara by finish. I might even put him on a couple parlays, but I'm fairly confident that CJ is going to win this one. Next bout, not confident in this one at all. Trevin Giles versus Preston Parsons. The problem versus pressure, and it's a dead even, minus 115. Giles come back on Parsons is a minus 110. So I was looking to bet Trevin Giles. But after watching tape on the guy, my memory of how he fought against one of the Cosi brothers, which one was it? Louis Cosi. It completely like broke me. I'm like, shit, I cannot bet on Trevin Giles. I like Preston Parsons. I've liked him since he came into the UFC, watching tape on him when he was scheduled to fight Daniel Rodriguez. I was like, this guy's pretty good. It's just that I don't think he's going to be able to overcome D-Rod in short notice, and he didn't, but he looked solid there. His last fight, he beat Evan Elder, which shit, now we know Evan Elder's a problem. Man, that guy was fantastic. He bought a bunch of in and out with that 50K. What it comes down to me, I think they have very, very similar styles. I think Preston Parsons is hungrier right now. Trevin Giles, he's been knocked out a couple times. That knockout that he suffered from Duplessis, I'm going to completely ignore that, really. Like, I know that's a bad knockout. He got just kind of flashed out, but Duplessis does that to a lot of dudes. The one that really made me worry about Trevin Giles and his well-being and his overall mental health was that fight against Michael Morales, where he was doing pretty well, even got his own takedown. To me, he looked better than he'd ever looked against Morales in that first round. That was his first time dropping down to welterweight, but then he got cracked and Morales did not let up on him. And the way he finished him, if you go back and see it, he was banging his head and it was just like bouncing all over the place. I was like, oh my God. And then his fight with Cosi, he fought almost as if he was just too afraid. He fought very much like Jai Herbert did against that Canadian jobber. And that worries me because if Trevin Giles at welterweight, I feel like as if Preston Parsons cracks him, I think we're going to see Trevin Giles super tentative, even though he's, to me, the more smoother technical boxer and striker. When it comes to the wrestling, I think Trevin Giles is improving. He had a decent enough showing of himself against Mike Malott in the Fury grappling, whatever. He couldn't get taken down by Malott. To me, though, I think because Preston Parsons wants this more. I think he's going to be hungrier. I think he has a really good chance to not only beat Trevin Giles, but even finish him, probably knock him out. Like, he tagged up Daniel Rodriguez on the feet, and, you know, Daniel Rodriguez barely moved, but I think cracking Trevin Giles with that kind of punch, it may not knock him out, but it might put him like a little bit wobbly. I'm going to take Preston Parsons to win this one. I'm going to say it's going to be a decision. I think a lot of these fights are going to go to a decision. It's going to be kind of funky with the judging because he's from Houston. I don't know. That's going to play a part. I know Trevin Giles has won a fight, a very dubious, strange fight because of Texas judges. But now that we know what we know about James Krause, maybe it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with Parsons by a decision. I mean, if he hits dog money, I might put a little bit on him, but currently I'm not really interested in these types of fights. I think it could go the distance, and God knows what will happen. This bout, though, Steven Peterson versus Lucas the Lion Alexander, I was intrigued by this one, mainly because I was looking at Lucas Alexander as a good guy to bet at plus 140. The comeback on Peterson is minus 175. I'm not too impressed by Peterson at all. Like, I keep saying to myself, and I keep drilling this in my head, like, the dude is just an unathletic dog of a man. Like, he'll fight you, he'll beat your ass if you're not up to his level. And I'm looking at Alexander, I'm like, is he UFC level? I'm not certain. I am very, very unsure of this guy. I like the guy a lot, like, mainly because of his Instagram. He posted a video that said, like, when your coach calls you into jiu-jitsu practice because he says your ground game is trash, and it pans to him striking during the jiu-jitsu practice. I'm like, this fucker's funny. I like him. But watching his regional tape, like, excluding his UFC debut, he got completely demolished by Joe Anderson Brito, which I'm not going to hold that against him, but his regional tape was surprisingly underwhelming. Like, I just didn't see anything too impressive. Like, he didn't show me a well-rounded game set and game plan. I mean, like, if you come in here trying to knock out Steven Peterson, which is what I think Alexander's going to try to do, it's not going to bode well for him because Peterson's a tough guy. He's very durable. And if you expect to knock him out, you're not going to really be able to fall back on anything else. And Steven Peterson can. I think he's got the grappling. He trains out of Fortis MMA. I just feel as if he's going to be prepared for anything that Lucas does. But I have been thinking, like, if Lucas were to implement a specific game plan, I'm positive he can win this fight. I'm just not certain if he's mature enough to do so. Not necessarily because he's 27 years old. I mean, like, mentally mature. There's some footage out there, not necessarily bad. It's just the tape that I saw on him just didn't give me that, like, this guy is serious. He gives me weird vibes. Like, maybe just wait to see what happens in this fight to see if he can implement a specific game plan. I think because his calf kicks are very solid, if he implements a good calf kicking game, stay on the outside, again, point fight Steven Peterson. I think that's the best way to go about this fight. Not necessarily trying to knock him out, just let the knockout happen if it happens. I'm not certain if he's patient enough to do that. That's why I keep saying, like, I don't know if he's mature enough to, like, stick to the game plan. Like, he's training at a Fusion XL. I know he's training with really good people. I'm going to stay away from this fight. I'm just going to enjoy it. I have to go with Steven Peterson just because I just think he, although is very unimpressive himself, he's tough enough to really get wins in the UFC. He's definitely able to push through adversity, you know, get covered in blood, go out there and make it a grimy fight, take the kid to the ground, beat him up a bit. I'm going to go with Peterson by a decision, but I'm really hoping Lucas Alexander shows up here. And I think if he shows up, it's going to be not necessarily impressive, but it'll be a good step in the right direction because I like the kid. I want him to succeed. Next bout, we've got Daniel Pineda, the Pit versus Top Gun Tucker Lutz. Not to be confused with his twin brother, Fucker Butts. But when it comes to this particular matchup, we've got the favorite in Tucker Lutz, minus 250. The comeback on the Pit Pineda, plus 195. 37 years old for a guy that he's not on the Jewess anymore. And it's kind of showed in his last few fights. Andre Fili was whipping him really badly up until the eye poke. And I'll give him credit. He wanted to fight. He lied his ass off. Like, how many fingers do I have? 2. I'm like, oh boy. 37 years old. I have to say, although Tucker Lutz isn't necessarily like the greatest fighter in the division, I think his time has definitely passed him. He hasn't fought in what year and 3 months or so. I think his time to really make an impact on the division would have been if he kind of kept a more active schedule. Right now, though, I think he's going to be stuck fighting the guys like whatever happened to that dude? The dude with 2 first names. Oh my God, Governor. He got knocked out by Dan Ige. I forgot his name. He's going to be fighting those guys for a while. And yeah, he lost to Sabatini, but a lot of people lose to Sabatini. I thought he looked pretty good up until he got taken down in body lock. I just think Tucker's going to have the better overall volume. He's going to have the better mix-up of a game. I think he can eventually hurt Daniel Pineda. Tucker's a tough guy. I like Tucker. It's just that he's not overly impressive anywhere. He's just a solid guy you can really depend on to mix things up and to beat guys like Daniel Pineda. Can Daniel knock him out? I suspect he can, but I think Tucker, that's his name. Tucker, what was his name? Gavin Tucker. There we go. The Battle of the Tuckers. That's probably the next matchup if Tucker Lutz wins this one, which I think he will. I've got Lutz by decision. Just don't get knocked out or whatever. And I think he beats Daniel Pineda by a decision. Tucker's not necessarily the most like dynamic puncher, so I think he can definitely just decision him up. Next bout, Chidi Njokuani versus Albert Duraev. Chidi, the African smoke demon, as I call him, versus Albert, I'm a piece of shit Duraev. Not a fan of Duraev. I don't like the guy. I always wish for his downfall. I wish he gets knocked down in the first round. And I will pick that because not only do I want that to happen, I definitely believe Chidi Njokuani can do it. When looking at the matchup, the odds, minus 195 for Njokuani. The issue that I had with that line is that, yes, although I thought he knocked out and he completely finished RoboCop, which in a civilized society, my friends, that fight would have been over. But we live in the just bleed era of fights, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. It's just that when a man has money on a fight and you see a guy's face mangled up like that, you're like, oh boy, I guess I'm going on vacation early with my money. But no. A man gets tired beating the crap out of a RoboCop, and then he kind of succumbed to bit of fatigue and he got TKO'd, which, I don't blame Chidi Njokuani. A lot of things could have happened there. He could have just felt during the break, like, hey, I won. You have an adrenaline dump and you no longer perform like you should. So I'm not going to hold that against him. But minus 195, I'm not looking forward to betting that. I might prop him up by a finish. Duraev, I know he's a wrestler. His last fight, he looked absolutely awful. He couldn't get the grappling up against Buckley, and Buckley finished him doctor stoppage. Part of me thinks he quit. He's like, oh, I can't see. I'm like, yeah, right, get out of here. Duraev, for a while, I've been thinking like he's kind of a bit of a fraud. Like, yeah, he's Russian, but he's a quitter. And I think in this particular matchup, he's going to have some success against Njokuani. But because this is a grappler versus striker matchup, and primarily it's a striker that can grapple, he's got his black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's not the greatest black belt. Definitely. We've seen how he got beat up by RoboCop. But in this matchup, because of the clinch that Chidi's going to present with his extremely great height, he's 6'3". The dude looks taller than that to me. 6'3" compared to the 5'11". He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. I think that if Chidi plays his cards right and he times things perfectly, I think he's going to be able to flying knee or tie plum and break the nose of Duraev and make him quit again. I just think that the money line on Chidi Njokuani, it's really not worth it. It's not worth putting him on parlays. I think Duraev definitely has a chance to win this one, just out grappling him. Maybe a couple moments of the round he's going to be exhausted and Chidi can come back. I just don't know how good Chidi's cardio is going to be. To me, though, best option for Chidi, the African smoke demon, is to just try to find that knee to Duraev. The moment he starts sniffing the crotch, just blast him with knees, blast him with elbows, hurt the man. By God, hurt the man, Chidi. And you can get this job done. So I'm going to go Njokuani round number 1. I might put a bet on him by finish just because I want it to happen. Maybe if I put money on it, it will. That's not usually how things work for me, but I'll still do it anyway. So I'll go with the Njokuani round number 1 knockout. Hopefully, like a knee in the clinch would be fantastic. Next bout, Alex Perez versus Manel Starboy Kape. Minus 230 for Kape. Come back on Perez plus 180. This one, to me, it's Kape's fight to lose. Definitely, obviously because he's the favorite. But with Kape, he's one of these guys I just don't always trust. And prime example, obviously, his UFC debut and his subsequent fight after that against that goofy guy with the funky face. Yeah, Matthias Nicolau. Like, he had both those fights essentially won had he done more, and he just doesn't really do too much. I love his hands. I love his speed. I love his ability to mix things up. I love the fact that he's a solid grappler. We saw that against Dvorak in his last fight where he got that nasty Kimura. It's just that he seems like a type of guy that I hate to say it, but he's a little lazy in there. Like, just do a little bit more and I can feel more comfortable taking you at the minus 230. When it comes to Perez, Perez is a solid guy. He's a good kicker, good low kicks. Not necessarily the best sub defense, but doesn't really matter. Like, Manel Kape isn't really going to jump on guillotines. He's going to try to knock him out. I think this fight could be a lot closer if it gets extended or if it becomes a dogfight. If Alex Perez makes it a dogfight, which is what worries me about betting Manel Kape. I do think he's going to win this one. I don't know if he's going to knock him out. You know what? I think he can. I know Alex has been knocked out horribly by Joseph Benavidez in the past. I think I just have too much respect for Alex Perez and his abilities. Yes, he's had it kind of rough his last few fights where he got submitted twice. But I know the guy's a dog. I know he's a scrapper. I know he can really push a pace here and do enough. My biggest worry is that he's going to be doing enough and he's going to get caught with like a nasty strike from Kape and he's just going to finish him up against the cage. So I'm going to predict that. I'm going to stay away from it. I might put Kape in maybe one parlay, but I'm not going to go balls to the walls like I did with Fiziev this past weekend where it did not bode well for me. So I'll go with Kape round number 2 TKO. Next bout, flyweight, we've got Andrea KKK Lee versus the future Macy Barber. The odds have it in favor of Barber, minus 210. Comeback on Lee is a plus 165. I'm seeing value immediately on Andrea Lee, mainly because I think she's just better everywhere. The only thing that I don't consider her to be better at is just the strength aspect of this fight. Macy's really good at really pushing the pace on girls that she doesn't see as threats. So, for example, Macy Barber fighting a girl like Montana De La Rosa, didn't really see her as a threat. Pushed her up against the cage, kind of beat her up a bit. That was a little too close for me. Her next fight after that, who was it? It was Miranda Maverick. I ain't counting that as a win. That was a robbery there. Jessica I had a good fight against Macy Barber, so much so that I saw her winning moments of that fight. You should not be losing moments to a girl like Jessica I at this level. I think Andrea Lee would have finished Jessica I. I don't like Macy Barber at that price. Had it been a little bit closer, I think she can squeak out a decision. Knowing Andrea Lee's been robbed in Texas before against, who was it? It was Roxanne Modafferi and the meth head, what's her name? Lauren Murphy. I've seen Andrea Lee win fights, and she still loses the decision, which is what I hate, especially because she's from Louisiana. She's going to be making a short drive up to San Antonio. I'm hoping she wins this fight. I think she has a really good shot at winning this fight. I think her hands are getting better. Her kicks are good. Jiu-jitsu's solid. We'll just see. I see this being a very close decision, so I'd rather be with the dog here. I like Andrea Lee. I think she's cute. Would I convert to being a commie for her? I don't think so, but it is what it is. I'll go with Andrea Lee by a decision here. Hopefully Maybe shit. Hopefully she loses and still wins. Let's go with that. Let's get some payback here against Macy Barber. This fight, though, I'm looking forward to the most, almost as much as the main event, if not more so. At featherweight, Nate the Train Landwehr versus Austin Lights Out Lingo. Minus 270 for Nate Landwehr is the absolute worst line on this card. It is the dumbest thing. He's not going to come out here and look minus 270. Even if he does, he will make sure he doesn't look minus 270. And the comeback on Lingo is plus 220. Lights Out versus the Train. This fight got put together because both men's opponents fell out. Ricardo Ramos, I actually had a bet on him at around the same odds at the minus 3-something odds against Austin Lingo. And I thought that was just, I know what Ricardo Ramos is going to do. I know what he's going to try to do. Whether he implements it or not, I can at least rely that he will do that. Nate Landwehr is very unpredictable. He fights so dumb sometimes. And I love it. I absolutely love it. He's a fun fighter to watch. But I'll say this, I did not have money on him against Onama. But I will tell you one thing. I found it so nice of Nate Landwehr to give Onama a chance to make my money back. I was like, oh, what a sweet guy Nate Landwehr is. Like Onama can't get back up, and he's letting him get back up. And then immediately after, Onama lands a solid punch on him. I'm like, what a swell guy this Nate Landwehr is. Now, had I had money on him, I'd have been yelling at the TV like, you absolute moron. And I had a very similar experience to that when it came to Kevin Holland and Wonder Boy. I was so pissed. Not to say that he's going to do that here with Austin Lingo. It's just that I know Nate Landwehr is very wild. I know Nate Landwehr doesn't necessarily have the best boxing defense. I know Nate Landwehr's out there and he's willing to put himself and test his ego. Austin Lingo, say what you want about the guy. The guy can crack. The guy's got good hands. He's got good boxing. Not a lot of kicks, but fundamentally, when it comes to his defense, it's much better than Nate Landwehr's. And in a fight that I think it's 50-50 on the feet, knowing that, I'll say this, Nate Landwehr, I know he's beaten a lot of good guys, especially in Russia. He is, to me, the better fighter, the much better fighter, but he's not the brightest guy. And in a battle of two hillbillies, I'll take the hillbilly that has better defense. I'm going to go with Austin Lingo. And I know very well, and I say this often, I know very well I could lose this, and I'm expecting it to happen. I can expect one of these men to fall. But what I cannot expect is Nate Landwehr to wrestle, Nate Landwehr to have a solid game plan, Nate Landwehr to be defensively sound, or Nate Landwehr to remain conscious. I can at least trust Austin Lingo's chin. The guy's got a solid chin. Nate Landwehr's chin is a bit suspect in the sense that he's got a bit of a Justin Gaethje thing going on where he gets hit, he gets knocked out. In his last fight, Onama knocked him out. He hit him one more time. He woke him up. I cannot trust that. I can't trust that. I can trust Austin Lingo to take an ass whooping and then come back and deliver an ass whooping. So I'll go with Austin Lingo. It's, again, to me, it's a 50-50 matchup. Take the dog odds for me. You can go with doesn't go the distance, but I can definitely see this one going the distance. Like, part of me is wanting this. I don't want this first round knockout. I don't want that at all. Like, I really want this to be worth the money for the people that are going to be there in the audience in San Antonio. So far, this whole card, it ain't worth it. Like, I'm surprised. I was like, I hate the crap on these cards, but like, it ain't worth the ticket for me. So I'm hoping this one is what delivers the crowd because I'm such a nice guy. I'm willing to prolong and have that butt clenching moment where like it's a horribly close fight, super fun, and then Bruce Buffer's pointing at what guy, and then he points to the other guy saying he's the winner because he does that. He does that. He gives away the winner when it comes to the decision. But I think Austin Lingo has a really good chance to not only win the decision, to knock out Nate Landwehr because Nate Landwehr is very hittable. Like, even going back to his fight and his win against Darren Elkins, it was pretty close. I had money on Nate Landwehr, and part of me saw that he did not win that decision, but I ain't saying shit about that. But yeah, next bout, co-main event, Yana Kunitskaya, Yana Santos now against Holly Holm. I'll be honest, like, I hate to be disrespectful, but this fight is not worth my time. it's not worth breaking down. I find it almost to be a slap to the face to me and to the audience that are coming and paying good money in a recession for a main event of the caliber that is the main event, but to have this as the co-main event is just absolutely unacceptable for me. Because of that, I will not discuss it. Holm decision. Main event of the evening, Marlon Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. And look at that. It's 50-50 currently when it comes to the Tapology. And also that's why I'm doing the Tapology instead of like the typical pictures, because I don't respect the card. But this fight I do respect, because this is very much so the #1 contender spot for the challenger. I would kind of hope so, really, because Merab's not going to want the title shot. Whoever beats, or I should say, whoever wins between Triple C and whoever the champion is, I can't remember his name, Aljamain, I believe is his name. Is going to fight more than likely this person. So if Triple C wins the belt, Merab. If Triple C doesn't win the belt, more than likely one of these two fighters is going to fight for the title. And we've got number 5 versus number 6. The odds are currently in the favor of Corey Sandhagen, -160. Come back on Vera, +135. And doing my research on this fight, I did the most research on it. And I've got some biases against both men, clearly. And there's two obvious ways each man can win. Corey Sandhagen by decision, if you want to go with that route, probably the smartest route. The -160, yeah, it's going to look good, definitely, but you're going to have some moments here where you're like, oh, wow, oh boy. And then the decision prop, obviously, because I don't foresee him finishing Marlon Vera. And just to make sure, because I'm pretty sure he's never been finished, Marlon, that is, I have to go back and check. So, yeah, the man ain't been finished no ways, no hows. I don't think Corey's going to be the guy to finish him. He's not necessarily known as a power puncher. He's definitely good at catching dudes with like the knees and such, but I don't think that shit's not going to work against Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera will eat those knees and keep coming. He did get that finish against Song Yadong with the elbow, the cut. If I'm being honest with everybody, and I could be dead wrong, you can school me on the comments or just shit talk me if you want. To me, it seemed like he definitely needed that cut to win that fight because it was not looking great. Like his performance did not look great to me against Song Yadong. It came down to that final round. It was essentially tied up. Like one judge had it for Corey, I think 4 rounds to, no wait, it ended in 4, 3 rounds to 1. For Corey, the other two had it 50-50, 2 rounds to Song, 2 rounds to Corey Sandhagen. So Corey could have lost that match had they let that fight continue instead of like, deeming it to be a worthy enough cut to stop the fight, which to me it definitely was. But had they allowed that to go through, because it was the same night that RoboCop came out with half of his face missing and they still let him go. So if they would have let that fight play out, there was a good chance that he would have lost that decision to Song Yadong. Not to say that the tide was turning. It was just a very close and competitive matchup. And he looked a little funky to me. He looked like he was definitely trying to get the takedowns. He couldn't get them. He didn't have the power to really push Song Yadong off of him, which makes me think like Marlon's going to just stalk him. And I appreciate that he used those elbows to his advantage. It's just that against Marlon Vera, he's usually the guy dealing the damage. When it comes to Marlon, though, he kind of waits too damn long. It takes him a while to get going. And, he's an intelligent man. He says a lot of very intelligent things when you listen to him but you listen to him talk. He says a lot of shit sometimes. I'm like, this guy's very smart, but he's saying it in such a way that's a bit either rude or bit odd. He keeps saying that, like, these are men that he's fighting. He's not fighting mythical creatures. Like, as long as he's conscious, he's going to go out there and try to beat them up. Like, it doesn't matter what they do. It's what he does. And I respect that. Like, it doesn't really matter what Corey Sandhagen's going to do. It really matters what Marlon Vera is going to do. Yes, Corey's probably going to win some rounds there. He's going to try to point fight him, stick and move, throw a lot of volume at him, which Marlon's not known to have a ton of volume. He's more of like a pressure guy, and he's going to get you down, beat you up once he has his hands on you, once he gets you down, or once he just implements his style. And Corey's very good at kind of getting out of the way, moving, lots of movement. Like he went 5 rounds with Peter Yan. And say what you want about Peter Yan. At that time, Peter Yan was the best in the world, and he went toe-to-toe with him. 5-round fight, though, he kind of gave the game plan to Marlon Vera. Like, Marlon's going to probably lose the first 2 rounds, but the next 3 rounds are the most important. Those are really the most pivotal for Marlon, because that's when he's going to start implementing his game plan. What I saw with Marlon versus Dominic Cruz, and that to me was like, I might be nuts saying this, but it was a master class for Marlon Vera setting up just the one attack that he needed throughout that whole fight. I'm looking at it live, and I'm like, I got Cheeto to win this one. And expectedly, he's not doing a whole ton. He's kind of, he is popping Cruz, dropping him. He's letting him get back in the fight, but as expected, Cruz is just outpointing him, outstriking him, doing the more, making it look like he's doing enough, even though Marlon's the one doing the damage, dropping him, hurting him. And he's doing so with the right hand. Like, he is setting up that right hand, and Marlon's just pinpointing like what what Dominic Cruz is doing. And then what I saw, and what I know Cheeto saw clearly, because we saw how it ended, he kept seeing every time that Cheeto threw the right hand, or he faked the right hand, he would duck to his right. Dominic, that is, duck to his right really hard to escape and reset. So in that 4th round, knowing that he's been hurt by that right hand of Marlon Vera, Dominic Cruz gets put in the position that he doesn't need to be in. He knows he's, oh shit, I'm close to the cage. I'm behind the black line. I need to escape. I need to escape intelligently and not get hit by that right hand. What Marlon did is he was so patient. He didn't throw that kick often. He'd probably do it like maybe a couple times. But the reason he did that is that you get lulled in that sense of like, he's not going to throw the kick because he hasn't thrown it. If I see that right hand duck under, get out of the way, he fakes the right, he blasts him with that left kick to the face, and he finishes him. And I'm like, wow. And like, going back and rewatching that fight, yeah, it did look like Marlon was just kind of giving up the rounds, but he was setting that up the whole time. Like, he wasn't going to take anything other than finishing Dominic Cruz, which we all know that's a dangerous game when it comes to these point fighters. It's a tough fight. It's a fun fight. I do think that Marlon can... The way I'll explain it is that Marlon just needs 1 round to win this fight, but Corey needs all 5. Corey definitely needs all 5. I don't think he's going to be able to finish Marlon Vera. The danger that Marlon presents in this matchup is just ridiculous. And the way that I saw Corey Sandhagen fight his last fight, it was concerning to me. It's like he kind of panicked in there. Maybe it's just something I'm reading into that wasn't there, but I saw him kind of like freak out a little bit, like he couldn't get the takedowns. If Marlon gets on top of him, it's going to be rough for Corey. He's going to be eating a lot of strikes. Like, how much damage can Marlon really do to Corey to make him slow down? I think he can. I just don't know how much damage Corey's going to do to Marlon to make him slow down, because no matter what, come the 1st round or the 5th round, he's dangerous as hell. Part of me doesn't want to bet the fight. I just want to enjoy it. But if I'm being honest, it's hard not to go with Marlon Vera. It's really tough not to go with him. I do think he can finish him. I think that because he possesses such a threat with the strikes and the knockouts, that you forget that he can get a submission. You forget that he's a solid grappler. I get the feeling that Marlon's going to come out here and look a lot differently than he has in the past. I think he might actually go forward in that 1st round instead of just download data. Granted, Corey Sandhagen winning by a decision might be a good hedge. Man, it's going to be a fun fight just because Marlon Vera fights are just so ridiculously unpredictable. You can have your ticket for Corey Sandhagen to win money line. You can have all your units on it, and you're walking to the bank, or you're driving to the casino to cash out, and then out of nowhere, Marlon just cracks him with something like he just snaps and goes for like a flying knee, breaks Corey's nose, and finishes up with strikes, and might be an early stoppage because there's so much blood. That kind of stuff is what worries me when you're betting against Marlon Vera. And yes, I've seen him lose decisions, and I've seen him get butthurt for losing these decisions. Song Yadong, for example, and Jose Aldo. But think of that. Jose Aldo was so afraid of Marlon Vera that he had to resort to, as some might say, bitch tactics, take his back and put a body triangle in him and just hold on for dear life. And I'm like, that is scary to think that a guy with a professional boxing record now of 1-0, of Jose Aldo being that, like, I don't want to mess with this guy. I don't think he'd have that same kind of fear against Corey Sandhagen. So for that particular reason, I'm going to take Marlon Vera. I'll say, I don't know if he can TKO him, but I think he can do enough damage in the rounds to steal those rounds. I'm going to say Marlon by a decision. That's just a pure like guess in my opinion because he's so damn unpredictable. I do like the thought of the plus money on Marlon. I am kind of hoping that a lot of people start betting Corey so I can take a shot at Marlon. I'm not certain if I'm going to bet anything other than lights out Lingo just because this whole card is a little funky. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Johnny Tiger Bomb MMA, like, share, subscribe. Catch you next week.